The economy works like a simple machine. But many people don't understand it or don't agree on how it works, which leads to avoidable financial troubles. To address this, Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater Associates, which is the world's largest hedge fund, has shared a simple but practical economic template that helped his fund to anticipate and avoid the global financial crisis. According to him, the economy is made up of simple parts and transactions that are driven by human nature, creating three main forces: productivity growth, short-term debt cycle, and the long-term debt cycle. By understanding these three forces and how they interact, we can understand how the economy really works. Let's start with the simplest part of the economy: transactions. The economy is the sum of transactions, which are simple exchanges of money or credit for goods, services, or financial assets. All cycles and all forces in an economy are driven by transactions. So, if we can understand transactions, we can understand the whole economy. Markets are made up of buyers and sellers making transactions, and an economy consists of all transactions in all markets. Like people and businesses, the government also engages in transactions, with the central government collecting taxes and spending money, and the central bank controlling the amount of money and credit in the economy through interest rates and printing new money. The central bank's actions have a significant impact on the flow of credit in the economy. The credit. It is the most important and least understood part of the economy. It is created when lenders and borrowers make agreements, promising to repay the principal and interest. Credit is important because it allows borrowers to increase their spending, which drives the economy. When you spend more, someone's income rises. When someone's income rises, lenders are more willing to lend them money, which allows them to increase their spending even more. And since one person's spending is another person's income, this leads to more increased spending and borrowing, and so on and so forth. It thus creates a self-reinforcing pattern that leads to economic growth and cycles. But credit isn't necessarily bad, as it can be used to efficiently allocate resources and produce income that improves living standards. For example, borrowing to buy a tractor can increase crop production and income, allowing for debt repayment. But it's bad when it finances overconsumption that can't be paid back. In transactions, you have to give something to get something, and your returns depend on your productivity over time. Increased productivity leads to growth in living standards, which is referred to as productivity growth. Those who work hard and are innovative raise their productivity and living standards faster than those who are less productive. However, productivity growth doesn't have a significant impact on economic swings, as it doesn't fluctuate much. In contrast, credit is the biggest driver of economic swings, as it allows people to consume more than they produce when they acquire it, and forces them to consume less than they produce when they pay it back. Debt swings occur in two big cycles: the short-term debt cycle taking 5 to 8 years and the long-term debt cycle taking 75 to 100 years. People typically feel the swings but often fail to recognize them as cycles, because they experience them day by day, or week by week. The short-term debt cycle is a pattern of economic expansion and contraction. During the expansion phase, economic activity increases, and prices rise due to the increase in spending fueled by credit. However, if spending and incomes grow faster than the production of goods, prices rise too much, causing inflation. The central bank will then raise interest rates to control inflation. This leads to less borrowing and less spending, causing a recession. In a recession, prices go down, causing deflation. If the recession becomes too severe, the central bank will again lower interest rates to boost borrowing and spending, and so the short-term debt cycle starts again. The short-term debt cycle is primarily controlled by the central bank and typically lasts 5 to 8 years. However, people have an inclination to borrow and spend more instead of paying back debt. It's human nature. Because of this, over long periods of time, debts rise faster than incomes, creating the long-term debt cycle. The debt burdens eventually become too big, causing debt repayments to grow faster than incomes, leading to reduced spending, lower incomes, and a reversal of the cycle. For the United States, Europe, and much of the rest of the world, this happened in 2008. It happened for the same reason in Japan in 1989 and in the United States back in 1929. So now the economy begins deleveraging. In a deleveraging, people cut spending, incomes fall, credit disappears, asset prices drop, banks get squeezed, the stock market crashes, and the whole thing starts to feed on itself the other way. Less spending leads to less income, which leads to less wealth, which leads to less credit, which leads to less borrowing, and so on. It's a vicious cycle. This is similar to a recession, but the difference is that interest rates can't be lowered to stimulate borrowing because they have already hit 0%. The debt burdens of borrowers have become too big and cannot be relieved by lowering interest rates. Lenders realize that debts have become too large to ever be fully paid back, and borrowers have lost their ability to repay and their collateral has lost value. This leads to a situation where the economy is not creditworthy. When faced with a deleveraging, where debt burdens have become too high, there are 4 ways to address the problem. The first is for people, businesses, and governments to cut their spending to pay down the debt. The second is to reduce debt through defaults and restructurings. The third is to redistribute wealth from the haves to the have-nots by taxing the rich. Lastly, the central bank can print new money. In modern history, all 4 methods have been used in a variety of combinations during deleveraging. However, unlike cutting spending, debt reduction, and wealth redistribution, printing money is inflationary, stimulative, and easier. The central bank can print money to stimulate the economy, but it can only buy financial assets. The central government can buy goods and services and put money in the hands of the people, but it cannot print money. So the central bank lends money to the government by buying government bonds. And the government uses that money to increase spending on goods and services through its stimulus programs, increasing both people's income and the government's debt, but lowering the economy's overall debt burden. Deleveraging can be a risky process and policymakers need to balance the deflationary and inflationary ways to maintain stability. A beautiful deleveraging occurs when debts decline relative to income, real economic growth is positive, and inflation isn't a problem. The central bank needs to print enough money to pump up income growth and get the rate of income growth higher than the rate of interest on the accumulated debt to turn things around. As incomes rise, borrowers become more reliable and lenders start to lend again. This helps decrease debt burdens and enables people to spend more, leading to economic growth. Ultimately, if the process is handled well, the problem can be resolved and the economy can return to normal. In summary, while the economy is more complex than a simple template like this can suggest, understanding the short and long-term debt cycles in relation to productivity growth can give insight into where the economy was, where it is now, and where it is likely headed. Finally, Ray Dalio shares the 3 rules of thumb that can lead to better economic outcomes in the long run, for people as well as the economies. First, don't have debt rise faster than income, because your debt burdens will eventually crush you. Second, don't have income rise faster than productivity, because you will eventually become uncompetitive. And third, do all that you can to raise your productivity, because, in the long run, that's what matters the most. Thank you so much for watching.